City Clerk, will you take the roll, please?
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez.
Present.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll. Councilmember Aylrod.
Here.
Councilmember Fay.
Here.
And Councilmember Schlachter.
Here.
Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, powering. Okay, council, any changes on this evening's agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved as published. Public comment. If you wish to address the city council under public comment, please have signed in on the green sheet. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes, and the council is not authorized by the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at this meeting on any issue that is raised by public comment that is not part of tonight's agenda. The mayor may refer the matter to staff to obtain additional information and report back as necessary or appropriate. We do have a number of public hearings this evening, the comp and transportation plans, and we have a number of budget public hearings also. So if you are here to talk about any of those, and have signed up, I would recommend that you do those during the appropriate public hearing so that they go on the record. Doesn't look like we have anybody on here for that. So Claudia McIntosh, come on down. And if you don't mind, state your name and address. Thank you. For the record, thank you.
My name is Claudia McIntosh, 2896 West Riverwalk Circle, apartment 317, Littleton 80123.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to read fast. I'm Claudia McIntosh, president of the Centennial Riverwalk Condominium HOA located at Prince and Santa Fe on the old Centennial Racetrack site. I am the spokesperson for 118 residents in our 2 buildings. On July 14th last year, Littleton had a huge storm. You may remember it due to a lady drowning in her friend's basement in Inglewood and a huge sinkhole that swallowed a car on Oxford. Our condos were also a casualty of this storm. Our large underground garage was flooded with 4 to 6 inches of stormwater due to runoff backing up from the golf course pond just north of our property. Not only did the golf course retention pond fill up and fail to drain, it backed up all the way to our property and filled our garage. The culvert that takes the stormwater from our area to the golf course was also overwhelmed due to its small size. Consequently, our garage became the last resort for the floodwaters. We sustained $100,000 of damage. Our elevator, which also flooded, was out of service for 31 days. Many of our senior and handicap residents had to temporarily find other accommodations. We've had similar stormwater issues in our garage in the past, but never with damages to this extent. Our search for documentation and plats that define our drainage plan date back to 1984. It became clear that the original platted drainage plan was significantly modified to eliminate the below-grade drainage system and also to eliminate the proposed swale on the golf course that is now the River Point High Rise. These modifications, approved by the city, are the direct cause of our persistent storm drainage problem. Systems which would have had the capacity to drain the area were deleted, leaving all storm water to pass only through our driveway through a small culvert to the golf course pond, which has only one partially blocked drain for this entire area of 22 acres. We've had several meetings with officials and engineers over the year, and there seems to be no consensus about who is responsible to fix this problem. The solution lies totally outside of our jurisdiction. We recently sent packets containing a letter, memos from the city engineer, and documentation from the archives to Centennial Metro District, Urban Drainage and Flood Control, South Suburban Golf and Rec, City Council and Mayor, and several other interested parties. The solution to this storm drainage problem is actually easy and probably an inexpensive one. The first step is simply lower the golf course pond so that it has increased capacity to accommodate more runoff. To do this, the drain on the north side of the pond needs to be unblocked. Second step would be to replace the small 18-inch culvert from our driveway to the golf course pond with a much larger one. Now we are asking the council to ask the city engineering department to come out, meet with us to propose a fix to this persistent problem. It was stated by the engineering department that we could expect a 50% chance of this happening every year. Please
Need to wrap it
refer
up.
to the existing.
Sorry.
That's
We
okay.
do have your written document, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And I can assure you that we'll have someone from staff contact you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Chadbourne.
My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. I have a question that you can answer tonight. It doesn't rely on anything. What are the balloons and the cookies and stuff for? What are they for? They're not here. I've been coming to city council meetings for many years. They're not typical. Why are they here? Is this a secret?
It is to me.
I don't know.
We anticipate an opportunity to celebrate a lot of work this evening.
Yeah, so the concept is that council votes are supposed to be undecided until they are taken and until all information is heard. I find this totally out of bounds and offensive, and I want that on the record. This should not be here. There should be no presumption that a vote will go a certain way. And this, I'm sure, was paid with our tax dollars. This is in violation of your most fundamental commitments. And I want that on the record.
Pam Grove? No. Okay. There's no one else signed up. Does anybody else want to speak to general public comment? Okay, seeing no one, we will close public comment and move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Consent agenda item A is a resolution 58, adopting the 2020 fee schedule. Resolution 50 is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with Mile High Flood District for construction of drainage improvements for Lee Gulch at Broadway. Resolution 56 is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with Denver Water to allow construction of a storm drainage outlet into the Highline Canal at Windermere Street. Resolution 51 approves an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Littleton and the City of Centennial for pavement rehab on East Orchard Road between South Pearl Street and Broadway. And Resolution 53 approves the 2020 operating plan and budget for the Highline Business Improvement District. Resolution 54 approves the 2020 operating plan and budget for the Aspen Grove Business Improvement District. Resolution 57 approves an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Littleton and the Colorado Department of Transportation for reimbursement of costs associated with operation and maintenance of traffic control devices on state highways within the city limits. ID 19-281 is a motion to cancel City Council's regular meeting on December 24th, 2019. And ID 19-280 is approval of the September 17, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Because I need a motion and a second.
Mayor, I move to approve consent items A through I. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second from Councilmember Driscoll. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, next is a resolution 59. This resolution adopts the Envision Littleton Comprehensive Plan and Transportation Master Plan. I believe we have a staff presentation.
Okay, I have a voice this time, so this should be easier. Good evening, Council. We're excited to be here this evening. A comprehensive plan along with the Transportation Master Plan provides a vision for the future of the community, along with the steps that are needed to make this vision a reality. As planning staff, we rely on this vision to guide developers in their application process. Since the existing comp plan, some consider to be 40 years old, others consider it to be a series of plans. What planning staff has had challenges with is that there are a lot of varying recommendations and no clear vision, and a lot of contradictory statements. Without a modern comprehensive plan on the planning staff, we had no framework for basing land use decisions and framing big picture decisions. This is why we're struggling with some of our larger pieces of property that we have left that want to be developed and not being able to provide a clear vision of what the city wants to see there. It's also difficult to put new technology and best practices when it comes to land management into action. You have to remember that when the original comp plan that we have, that is 40 years old, if you want to go back that far, we did not even have personal computers, and we didn't even have smartphones, let alone cell phones. Without a comprehensive plan, we are forced to be reactive to development rather than proactively guiding development in the city. We are making land use decisions and not fully weighing the effects on the transportation network. The new comprehensive plan, which will hopefully include a transportation plan and future land use and character map, provides the city and council and staff a holistic view of the city, a holistic view based on land use, heritage, transportation, infrastructure, just to name a few. It has a clear vision, one that was created by the citizens of Littleton for the city of Littleton. We're very excited as a planning and engineering staff at the possibility, hopefully, of having this comprehensive plan, including the transportation master plan and future land use character map, that all these documents lay out the challenges that we know that the city faces, but it also lays out amazing opportunities for us to address those challenges. We have a plan now that when we are reviewing developments, we can confidently point applicants to clearly know what Littleton wants and what Littleton expects. We cannot stress enough as staff that we have done a lot of hard work, and that hard work has not just been on the part of staff, but this entire community to get to this point that we are tonight, to be considering adopting a new comprehensive plan and transportation master plan. But we need to be clear that this input and hard work is needed to create the regulations. That's what comes next to make this comprehensive plan a reality. We need to make those goals and policies and action steps of the comp plan and TMP come to life. We're excited to continue the amazing conversations that were started in these last 18 months, because it really has been a start to the conversation, and those conversations will continue as we move forward to make the vision set forth in the comprehensive plan and transportation master plans a reality. That concludes staff comments. Now I have Planning Commission comments. So as you know, last evening, Planning Commission met to have their public hearing regarding their recommendation of adoption to City Council. 11 citizens last night offered their comments. Those comments were positive for the adoption of the framework that the plan set forth. There was some concern expressed on the 40-day review period. Some would have liked to have more time to review. Many of the comments were more regulatory in nature and will be addressed with the upcoming zoning code update. There was also some discussion on the pie charts provided in the comprehensive plan and what they represent. Again, those will be detailed in the zoning code update process that we'll have in 2020. Planning Commission heard these comments, and they talked about how excited they are to have this plan, and they are ready to go and get things done. They enjoyed all the conversations they had with the community and hearing what citizens and visitors love about Littleton. They feel the comprehensive plan is truly a Littleton-focused document, and that the TMP, the Transportation Master Plan, ties Littleton's ideals that they heard over these last 18 months into actions that we as a community can undertake. They also feel the Envision Littleton process has been a true grassroots effort, and it has resulted in a document that allows the Planning Commission to truly be a planning commission and not a reactive board. The Planning Commission voted 6-0 for the adoption of the comprehensive plan, as well, which includes the Transportation Master Plan and a future land use and character map. And at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Kathleen.
Good evening, Mayor Brinkman and members of City Council. It's my pleasure tonight to bring the Envision Littleton Comprehensive Plan for your consideration. We have prepared a short recap of the entire process for you that's in the form of a video, so I'd like to share that with you now. From the start, Envision Littleton demanded that we do things differently. Unlike other communities that spend about their first 6 weeks talking about what they'd like to achieve, we spent about 9 months listening to the stories, memories, hopes, and dreams that our residents and businesses had for the next 20 years. We went out into the community with giant ears and a really large notebook to listen some more, and capture all the notes. All those notes allowed us to create a roadmap for the next 20 years. But we didn't get to this point without more partners than I can name. Thanks is due to so many, but none more than our residents and businesses. They approached this whole effort with such passion and generosity of time and ideas. The amazing results are a testament to our founders, past civic leaders, that enabled our community to prosper and navigate through periods of both incremental and phenomenal change. We also owe a huge thanks to all the thought leaders that have taken part in our 4-part speaker series. Chris Akers, economist for the State Demography Office, laid out the realities in the region and state, which allowed us the chance to debut the existing conditions data books for Littleton. One of the most informative steps in any long-range plan is to investigate and validate what is truly happening in the city today. This gets everyone on the same page of where we are now before we start talking about scenarios for where we are heading.
If we think about where we are right now in Littleton, and if we tried to draw like a geographic center of where all the growth is, it would almost come right there at that confluence of Arapahoe County, Jefferson, and Douglas. So if we think about it, you're right in the heart of where most of the growth has been occurring. And part of that's due to your proximity. You could get up to Denver in 33 minutes if everything goes well, and you get your parking spot and the like there as well. You can make it down south into Douglas County in considerably less time, and even on to El Paso County. So you have a good location there, a lot of good north-south corridors there for transit as well.
Then in April, I think one of the most impactful moments was hearing from Darren Atterbury and the story of Fort Collins on their path to gain vision clarity.
People love this place. And that's one of the things I wanted to share too, is that, I'm coming from Fort Collins where people say, they really, really like or they really, really love their community. 90+% of our residents feel that way. That's here too. And so, maybe some of the things that I've shared is just, it's you sharpening your blade. It's not a complete overhaul. It's maybe there's something that's going on in Fort Collins that might be applicable here, or maybe and some of these statements have been really helpful for me too. It's just your narrative is so important. What message are you sending to your community about the future of Littleton?
We also set the stage with Brett Keese for the important work of 2020 and 2021 to update our land use codes and zoning.
Each of you have the opportunity to have your fingerprints on the future of this community by being involved, by sharing your voice, by sharing your ideas. And that's the real value of this process, and that's one of your core values, is engaging and involving and bringing people together. One of my favorite quotes is that it takes a community of differences to make a difference in the community. So if we were all alike, it would be simple, but it may not be the best outcome. It's the sharing of ideas, and that's what creates community. And so it's very valuable that we work together to identify what we want Littleton to be in the coming years.
Even with hundreds of events and thousands of conversations, we were constantly looking for any and all opportunities to engage our residents and businesses. Again this year, we had the chance for the community to check our work once we released the draft comprehensive and transportation master plans on August 8th. During this public comment period, we held a telephone town hall. It's like a radio talk show. You sit in the comfort of your home, and we bring the town hall to you. We called out to residents, and within a matter of seconds, we had a town hall with 365 attendees. What was most impressive was that attendees stayed for the town hall almost 35 minutes on average. Together, they spent almost 2,500 minutes in total. To bring all this incredible community spirit together, we hosted our fourth, last, and final speaker series with the dynamic, charismatic, and inspirational Peter Kageyama. Peter's an author and innovator that works around the nation to bring more love and creativity to how cities engage their co-creators. Co-creators have been instrumental to our process. We know the partners that helped us envision Littleton in 2040 will continue to be vital to realizing all we are striving for over the next 20 years.
I think the key thing to remember, it's like regionally we work together, but there is something about a pride of Littleton, a pride of place, that you want to have sort of your own unique identity within that greater conurbation, that is the Front Range, and hopefully, clearly you guys do. It's like, then it goes back to asking that question, what is it about us? What is it in our DNA? What is it in our principles that made us Littleton? And how do we sort of, maintain that and use that to carry us forward for the next 20, 40, 60 years?
Starting last year, the passion and emotional connection for everyone in our community was so important to our success. The relationships we built and the champions for Littleton that emerged will be the stewards of this vision and plans. We will continue to honor the amazing past, reflect on what is happening today, so that we can proactively look to the future. In 2020, we will focus on bringing both the comprehensive and transportation master plans to life. The clarity of our vision will allow us to break down silos, think about all that makes the city tick, so that we can align the resources we have to achieve the results and benefit everyone living in, working in, and visiting Littleton. So you'll remember that Envision Littleton started back in March of 2018 at your retreat, and the last 18 months have included 8 joint leadership sessions with City Council and Planning Commission, as well as 11 additional meetings with our Planning Commission. And we've dedicated a tremendous effort to hearing feedback from the community throughout the entire process. The project in 2019 was broken into 5 phases, and the 2 consultant teams, Candid Keys Collaborative and HDR, worked to combine milestones and community engagement with each of those phases. Both documents have been made available for public review beginning August 8th, and comments were due on September 16th. We received over 100 submissions of public comment that included hundreds of actual comments. Now we bring the plan for your consideration tonight, but as you know, this is simply another step in a much larger process that includes next year's important work to update the land use codes and zoning. This policy document remains a living, breathing framework, a guiding document that requires a strong commitment to update every 5 years. So with that, I'll conclude staff comments and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Council, any questions for staff? Karina.
Jennifer, you summarized the Planning Commission's meeting last night and that they voted 6-0 in favor of the comprehensive plan as amended, or can you specify?
Yes, thank you for that clarification. There was an amendment that was proposed to E&T number 16. And I do believe you all received an email in regards to that proposal.
You have a hard copy on your desk. It's right behind the resolution from Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none?
Not at the moment.
Exactly. Seeing none, we will open public comment. And I have a sign-up sheet, so we'll get started with that. You have 3 minutes. I'll call your name, I'll call the person next so that you can queue up. First is Kent Bagley, followed by Mark Rudnicki.
Mayor, members of council, it's my pleasure to be here tonight and to talk to you about my total support for the Envision Comprehensive Plan. I'd really like to spend a few minutes talking about the Transportation Master Plan. I've had the opportunity to review the document, and I'm going to say the first 8 chapters, which are more of a narrative of the Transportation Master Plan, and am fully supportive of that portion of the document. When it comes to the implementation plan, I feel that there's going to need to be some extensive review and prioritization in looking at projects and understanding what we can fund given present budget constraints and being fiscally constrained. But I know that with more citizen participation and open dialogue, that we'll be able to come forward with opportunities for the Transportation Master Plan to be implemented. It's just a start, and I want you to know that from my perspective, I'm supportive of the work that the consultants have done, HDR, and it's just a roadmap or a framework for the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kemp. Mark. After Mark is Kate Eckel.
Mark Rudnicki, Aberdeen Village. It's been a long 18-month process to get where we are today. Several people have said that the process is too quick. I would tend to agree with them. However, what made it successful was the great job in reaching out to all segments of the community with the internet, town hall meetings, lectures, booths at the fairs, speaking at public houses, basically the best public outreach I've ever seen in my many years in Littleton. We're also blessed with very good consultants, and they did a wonderful job listening to what Littleton wanted. We've been working with an existing outdated comp plan that was last completed, last written when Carter was still president. Times have changed, I think, since then. That has forced the Planning Commission, council, and city staff to be reactive rather than proactive when dealing with new development, redevelopment, community enhancement. These new documents will change that. We've never had a transportation master plan. Any business without a plan would be shortly out of business, but we've been stumbling along for years, never having a transportation master plan. Are these documents perfect? No. There's no such thing as perfect with these kinds of documents. We can't cover all subjects and all issues. Littleton's MO in the past has been with fear, with not gaining perfection, grinding to a halt. Perfection has been the enemy of the good. There's those who say the Planning Commission, that the comp plan is not detailed enough. That is not the nature of the comp plan. The details will come next when we work on the zoning code and redoing the zoning map. Those are the next items coming up. That's where the detail left out of the comp plan will happen. The comp plan is a living document, as people say, and it will be changed once the zoning and the zoning map, the work has been done. We'll be re-looking at the comp plan, making tweaks and making improvements. Also, the city should commit itself to a yearly review of the comp plan and also a complete rewrite of the comp plan every 5 to 7 years. The Planning Commission was very enthusiastically in favor of the comp plan and the Transportation Master Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy, would you mind closing the doors? There's an echo back. Yes. Thank you. Kate Eckel.
Don't like seeing yourself?
And then after Kate is Frank Atwood.
Good evening. My name is Kate Eckel, and I live at 5378 South Loughton Street. I'm speaking in support of the comprehensive plan. I have been part of the Envision Littleton Planning Committee. Over the last 25 years of my professional career, I can speak to participating in many strategic planning meetings. The Envision Littleton experience was organized, well thought out, and with the goal of hearing the needs and desires of the Littleton community. A comprehensive plan is just that. It's comprehensive, all-encompassing, a huge roadmap to keep us on track for the next 20 years. What I am most proud of being a part of is the focus on the community's core values of being a model community, the importance of our local history, that Littleton is inclusive, that we value our parks and open space, and the importance that the community has for civic involvement. I am so proud of the guiding principles of being anchored and authentic, connected, active, and engaged. But my passion, my heart, lies with the heritage, art, recreation, and tourism component of the document. Littleton is rich with its heritage, an art collection that encompasses the last 55 years, its parks and open space that is almost a third of our city, and our booming tourism industry. Great things lie ahead in this area, and the fact that this document has 5 heart goals and 25 heart actions to address these areas, well, it just makes me giddy to think of what this community can do. I cannot say enough good things about the Envision Littleton process and the amazing effort of everyone on this team to elicit input from the community. The process was so warm and engaging, and I am in full support of the Envision Littleton comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank? After Frank is Pat Donahue.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Frank Atwood, and I live at 7094 South Castilla Street. Thank you for creating a new comprehensive plan. My question is, if the new comprehension plan permits irresponsible growth before appropriate zoning can be passed, will you declare a building moratorium? Restated, will you and your successors have the courage to declare a building moratorium if you discover the approved comp plan is permitting growth that is destroying the character of the city and accept being accused of closing Littleton for business? My understanding is there has been more than half a dozen months of no new projects being submitted to the Planning Commission. I assume there will be a stampede of backlogged projects before the zoning code can be updated. If these projects are destroying the character of the city, will you have the courage to declare a moratorium? I assume developers living outside the city or in gated communities or heavily regulated HOAs will accuse you of closing Littleton for business. Will you have the courage to stand up to these accusations and declare a moratorium? Again, if the new comprehensive plan permits irresponsible growth before appropriate zoning can be passed, will you declare a building moratorium? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Linda Newfinke.
Pat Donahue.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pat. No, come on down. Linda, you're after Pat.
Next.
Pat Donahue, 1600 West Mineral. On behalf of Littleton Business Chamber, as well the South Park Owners Association and my neighborhood that I run the HOA on, I want to just say a few things about this, that Kathleen has been aggressive with me to participate, which I really do appreciate. I didn't really like giving up the time. I'd rather, drink with Driscoll or do some other things. We're Irish, it's good. Anyway, I really do feel like I got involved in this. And I think the only thing worse than rules is no rules. And I think having a plan commits you all to some big stuff. The way I read the economic tax piece to this is that you're putting yourself on the hook. There's a lot of policies here that you're going to have to adhere to, such as development stuff. You're not going to be able to just take a vacant piece of ground in South Park and allow a apartment building to go up there. You're going to have to study, the policy states, you're going to have to study and review and commit to a committee, basically, in a sense, that's going to say this is the physical responsibility to this. So I think it's wonderful that you got the guts to really go out there and put yourself on a hook, because that's what you're doing. And my business, I had the pleasure and the experience to go through ISO 9000, which I'm sure there's a bunch of people in this room that knows the commitment to that. It takes a couple years to do it. It's about who you are, what you say you do, and then doing what you say you do. And I look at this plan that way. So I'm excited about it. I would like to add that I think you're going to have to amend it quicker than maybe you think. Once every 5 years, I think you're going to need to have an amendment process, constant. Ride sharing changes so much, and mass transit changes so much. You're going to have to change with it. So I don't know how you're going to. And then I'm not sure how you want to manage, that we're hoping for Littleton to buy a couple parking lots on Littleton Boulevard and run a trolley down from Littleton Boulevard down into Main Street. So when you're doing that stuff, you're going to have to adopt fast. So that would be my only, suggestion in regards to this. Anyway, thanks and good luck.
Thank you, Pat. Linda?
By the way, I'm German, not Irish. I'm here today. My name is Linda Knufinke. I live in the 4th District, and I also live next to in the proposed access preservation area and the proposed corridor mixed-use area. What I wanted to say is the value of the open space in Littleton is everywhere in the comprehensive plan, and South Platte Park is Littleton's crown jewels. And there are over 20 goals and policies promoting open space that are listed in the plan. The Transportation Master Plan references a road through South Platte Park unless you fix it. If it is not the intention to build a road in South Platte Park, clean up the language and show in the 8+ references to a road in South Platte Park, clean up that language so it's crystal clear and the road would not be built. Let's talk about access preservation definition. It's nebulous. Alternatives can mean a road through South Platte Park. So, and then also on the very last bullet, the changes are made to the South Platte Drive Critical Corridor summary on page 130. That has not been included in your project. And if you look at bullet number 2, it says parallel routes, and it can only mean roads. And then look at the last bullet to study building a road through South Platte Park. And if you look at this, it's page 63 of the Transportation Master Plan. It says on a new frontage road. I understand it could mean anything, but if we clarify the language, it would be better. And then this is in table 26, page 140. It's a new road. How obvious can it be? It's a new parkway extension, so clarify that. And then here's probably the same road and extension. There's no two ways about it. South Platte River only goes to Berkshire Aspen Grove. So clarifying the text might be good. Here's another reference to the road extension. And if you don't want to build a road through South Platte Park, say it in the Transportation Master Plan. Don't make us guess or try to follow imprecise language allowing for a road. And then allowing for a road, you single-handedly eliminate tens of millions of dollars spent over the past 30 years by partners that you have. And then I just wanted to say one quick thing about the corridor mixed use. The primary land use types does not include single-family housing, and the Ensor South and Columbine Square and let's see, what other one? Norgren property has all proposed houses to be developed on that property. So I'm not really sure exactly if you're affirming with this plan that you want high-density apartments through the activity areas in Littleton. So thank you.
Thank you. Pam Chadbourne?
I think I've spoken enough up to now so that folks know that I'm not in favor of the comp plan. We had a comp plan, but it was disregarded. It's not that we didn't have one or that it was old. It was disregarded and disrespected, as this is. At the very least, what I'm going to ask you to do is amend the comp plan and mark the proposed future land use map and the uses as in work or in development or in progress. There is time before the Pell, and the Pell does not need the uses that are in this map. In fact, the proposed aggressive land use changes are not essential, and reduced impact changes would work for now. You could easily amend them. This is not a big ask, and this is very reasonable. Better would be to continue this because, again, there's time for the Pell, and the city would hold information sessions for the citizens. So there's tons of things wrong here. I'm going to note that insiders love this. And they've spoken because they were insiders and they got to put their stamp on the products. But the claim that citizens were involved is false. And the reason I say that is because I live downtown. All of downtown is changed to urban use. Now, I'm going to tell you, not only have citizen input from the beginning said we like downtown, it's quaint, it's small town charm. And urban is not small town charm. Urban, in fact, has an example of a 5% green space and 80% structures, which I'm going to tell you, in downtown never asked for. That did not come from us. It came from somewhere else. And to tell us that we have the burden to tell you we don't want it is wrong. That burden is not on us. Cal Mareeb and Littleton Business Chamber do not represent us. City Council, you never asked us if we want to be urban. In fact, it flies against the input that you received. The uses we have now are much closer to suburban in most of the area. It is not the existing zoning to be urban, only part of it is. Change all of these 5 types in the northeast area and downtown back to neighborhood conservation and have the discussions for these uses in the future. You never did. It is false that citizen comment built this plan. This came from 7 city council people, 7 planning commissioners, 19 CCC people who were appointed by the mayor. I don't think there was one low-income person, one tenant, one small business tenant who represents the people who would be displaced by development in this area. It is a violation of your representation. You should represent everyone in the city, including these folks. We should have a no displacement requirement in here. There's none. There's much more to say. I put it in an email. Please mark the future land use map as in work. It is not a consensus document, and it did not come from us.
Thank you, Pam. Next is Kyle Henderson.
Good evening. Kyle Henderson, Chair of the South Metro Housing Options Board. And I think Drinking with Driscoll is our next council get-together activity. I'm excited about that. So Irish as well, I guess. So I'm here speaking on behalf of the South Metro Housing Options Board. We've been involved from the beginning and excited to happily endorse Envision Littleton. And I'm just going to put on record the letter that we had already submitted, but make it available for public comment. On behalf of South Metro Housing Options, I would like to offer the following affirmative comments about Envision Littleton. Envision Littleton does a really good job of identifying many of the most significant issues related to the housing needs of Littleton, such as lack of affordable housing, and challenges related to aging in place, homelessness, aging housing stock, and the potential for loss or lack of diversity due to unattainable housing choices in Littleton. It recognizes these housing-related issues, which are important because they impact the entire community. South Metro Housing Options also applauds that the comp plan discusses the need for a variety of housing options for different groups of people, like seniors and families, but also a variety of income levels as well. It points to the importance of diverse housing stock, which is also important for the community, i.e. affordable rental units, but also affordable home ownership. Finally, South Metro Housing Options appreciates that the comp plan references the Littleton Housing Study that was conducted by BBC Consulting. The housing study was a thorough document that provided a considerable amount of valuable information and is beneficial to the use as a guide going forward as it relates to the housing needs of Littleton. The comp plan also does a good job of tying different challenges together, as most of the challenges do not exist on an island. For example, transportation, housing, education, and healthcare are all connected. Housing located near transportation can be very valuable so people can have access to light rail or to bus lines if they do not own an automobile. Another example is transportation and housing can both be important factors in access to healthy food options. In closing, we want to thank you for the opportunity to be involved with the development of Envision Littleton. South Metro Housing Options looks forward to continuing its work with the City of Littleton to address our community's housing needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Grove.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Pam Grove. I'm a Littleton resident, and I live at Broadway and County Line. I wanted to provide feedback on the Envision Littleton process, specifically the Envision Littleton Community Coordination Committee, the CCC. And how I got involved in that was when Mayor Brinkman asked the commissions to set for somebody to be a representative. I was elected for the Historical Preservation Board. And my job was to provide feedback on historical preservation, as well as be a liaison back to my board and commission on what was going on with the comp plan and the transportation master plan. As you know, we met 5 times, and we were also very involved in the speaker series and learned additional information that helped us when we met. And I really liked the Fort Collins city manager and what he provided in terms of how they plan and what they do for city management. Not only was the CCC able to give feedbacks on the drafts, but we acted as a sounding board to the Envision team, talking to Kathleen, so they didn't become too insulated. The CCC meetings were very interactive. We met, and it wasn't all about lectures. It was working teams. We came up with ideas. We reported out, and then the Envision team took that back and incorporated it into the drafts. When I read the first draft of the plan, the word historic or heritage was barely mentioned. And through our input, my input, and from our Historical Preservation Board, you can see that there's a lot of discussion in the plan, goals, policies about the heritage of our town, and ways to protect our historical assets to keep the charm of Littleton. So this whole process, I think, was a very, very good one. And as we move to implementation of the next step of the plan, I really encourage City Council to have a CCC type of organization in addition to all the other forums and vehicles to give citizen input. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Julie Falkenberg.
Hi. My name is Julie. I live at Bradley House. It's a HUD property on Ventura. The only excuse I have is that I haven't been well.
Julie, could you speak in?
Normally, this is the kind of thing that absolutely out of the box would get my attention. No question. I remember seeing the Envision Littleton logo on a lot of things. But the only actual thing that I really keyed into was in August, that tiny little postcard that said, "Come and look it over." I don't remember getting stuff in the mail. I pretty consistently read the Littleton Reporter or whatever it is. I didn't see anything in there that urgently said, "Come to this." I never got emails, I never got phone calls, I didn't see any of these activities. So, and that's been going on for over a year, and like, why didn't I notice this? What I can say based on, okay, I read the transportation plan last night. The first half of it is what I call basically frou-frou, fluff and frou-frou. The meat is the second half, and that was interesting, with the numbers and the dollars. That's what made interest and sense to me. The rest of it, which I guess is how they're trying to account for all their participation. I'm sorry, but 872 online surveys, that's less than 2% of the people who live in Littleton. 635 of those were actual residents. That's like, is that even 1%? I don't think everybody was involved, as this likes to claim. My other comments are, you know, even when they say that they engaged 5,500 people or more, that's still only 12% of 45,000 people. I don't think that's enough. But in the end, when it comes to transportation, it doesn't matter so much because the meat's there. And they clarify that this is not the end-all, be-all. There will be changes needed, and I appreciate that. I didn't have time to read the larger plan, the comprehensive, but I would like to say that we have been given a gift in terms of the physical being of downtown Littleton. We have a historical gift that we cannot damage or degrade in any way. Too many other cities have done that. We can't have high buildings. We can't have crowded homes because we'll just ruin this gift. And I understand, I'm pretty sure the comp plan is written the way this is, with lots of ways and times to make changes. You need to wrap it up. And I'm glad of that. I'm sure it's in there. I just hope we remember the gift that we have.
Thank you. Rob Hanna.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of council. Rob Hanna, I'm the Executive Director for South Suburban Parks and Recreation, 6631 South University. First of all, great job on such an important document. I've probably been involved in a half a dozen of these in my professional career. Extremely well written. The public outreach that you guys went through in the year plus on this, outstanding. Every event that we were at South Suburban, you guys were there, talking to folks, getting input from citizens, extremely important and something you should be very proud of. Specifically from South Suburban, was very encouraged by all of your comments, especially in the heart section about partnerships, the importance of quality of life, the importance of parks and recreation, open space, specific mentions to Hudson Gardens, South Platte Park, obviously things that we're very passionate and proud about. And I think that shows in your surveys and your community outreaches too, is how important all that is to your community. This document has all of that in there and shows how important that is. So I think it's a great guiding document. And just here to let you know that you have South Suburban support for this document, for implementing this document, and you should be extremely proud. And I think you should celebrate this event. I think it's going to be a great document that will help you, will help us in supporting you as partners and getting to that next level of where you guys want to go. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all who has signed up. Does anybody else want to speak? Jose?
Good evening, Council. Jose Trujillo, Joseph, 5574 South Huron Street, Littleton, Colorado. I have some concerns, and I think that this should be broke into two separate parts to be voted on. And mine is in the Transportation Master Plan. There's probably a good number of people in Littleton that don't know that a road is proposed through behind the Aspen Grove that would destroy. We just had Mr. South Suburban over here say, we're so happy, we do things right. And we are going to destroy South Platte Park. Now, I would like that broken out, and I would like you people to take a fight to this and get it off of the transportation. If you're going to wait until it's right in your face, you're going to be having a problem. They'll say nobody ever cared about it. So why don't you get it off of the transportation part of the plan, and I think a lot of people would be a lot better. I would hate to see all of the monies that have been spent in South Platte Park. She's been there, and if this goes through, I only have 7 people I got to vote. I have my personal opinion, and it was your fault. If you ain't got the guts to fight them and get that off of there, I don't have no respect for you, because that's going to affect everything South Suburban's doing and what this Littleton's doing and what is best for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Paul?
Good evening, Council. My name's Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle. My only concern is what Frank Atwood was talking about. I think this document is basically just fine. I'm concerned about what happens in Littleton development-wise between the time that this thing is approved and the time the new zoning is in place. I think there's a risky time in there that may need a moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else? Yeah.
Dan Radulovich, 7,000 South Gallup. I spared you for my last name tonight.
She didn't offer it this time.
Should have signed up.
She just smiled.
So anyway, I'm going to talk about the housing and neighborhood section of this particular plan. I just have some observations and suggestions on it. They're kind of the same as what I brought up to the Planning Commission last night. Goal number 4 is that neighborhoods that maintain their character or carefully managed when headed toward transition. Now, when I read through this, I find 3 policies that are related to that, and actually 2 of them mention development along with the preservation. And then I also, in the actions, I can find 1 action that has to do with code enforcement that has to do with it. Under 11 in the bullet points there's another one that has character-based zoning, which again is about development blended with the character-based. And on 14, there's also outreach to the HOAs and neighborhoods that don't have HOAs, which I was really interested to see how you're going to do that. But nonetheless, what I would propose is that you periodically take a look at the zoning changes that are occurring, they're either approved, denied, where they're coming from, who's bringing them, and review that on at least an annual basis to make sure, and do this on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis to make sure that you're not the ones who are driving the change, and that the people in the neighborhoods, and this is what people really want. Secondly here, there's obviously the zoning is going to be the biggest contention that you're going to have with this particular plan. And this applies to most of you that are here, but also the people that are in here running for office. I would also like to say that the consultant on several occasions has said that this is a guiding document, roadmap, framework, whatever you want to call it, for the zoning code update. And I want to make sure that it stays that way, that it's not something that is a by the book, this is gospel, this has to be in there. What I don't want to hear in this process of the zoning update is we have to do this because the comp plan says so, or we can't do this because the comp plan says so. The consultants on several occasions have said you're probably going to end up amending your comp plan after you get through with the zoning code so that they will actually work with one another as opposed to working against one another. When you're going through this process, just be sure to use this as a guiding document. It's going to create a big zoning conversation. It's probably going to last well over a year, which is actually probably a good thing. But I just please want you to remember that particular statement. And if I ever hear that statement, I will probably come back with video evidence of your consultant telling you not to do this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close public comment. Council, any questions, additional questions or comments to staff? Karina?
I'd like to ask staff to comment on a question that was posed by a few this evening. Perhaps city attorney or community development can address this transition from comp plan to zoning, et cetera, and how that would in fact work, just to get it on the record.
There are different kind of legal tools that can be used. That's up to council how we want to handle that. I know there are legal implications for applications that we do have in process if anything is decided. I can tell you on the staff side, we'll be taking these next, what do we have, 90 days? Less than 90 days until January 1st of really trying to map out how we're going to be doing the zoning code update. If we're going to be focusing on geographic areas of the city that we feel are at the highest risk, or if we're going to focus on zone district by zone district and looking at that. So that's really what we're going to be doing as a staff between now and January 1st to try to map out what's important. And we definitely want to have conversations with council as to what they see as important as well.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, I just want to reinforce the comment here by Jennifer Henninger, our Community Development Director. And I've talked with council here a little bit about this more specifically. Assuming the council does act on this and approves this, both the comprehensive plan and the TMP, staff is meeting in early December here to kind of map out with our consultants kind of the next steps here. We recognize this is an important issue. And so our consultant team, Candid Keys Collaborative, there specifically, we're going to be working with them trying to understand how we might package up different parts of the zoning code to address this issue. So there are tools legally that we can use to kind of manage this, but we are keenly aware that there is a period of time between the adoption of a comp plan and actual zoning code change. So how do we manage that to minimize our exposure? It's a great question. And my hope is that certainly no later than the retreat that I hope the next council has in early February to answer that question very specifically.
Thank you. Peggy?
Yes, so I have a question. Would you clarify what you mean by highest risk? I mean, they're not going to sink in the ground, so something else is meant by what you said.
Something that came forth in the comprehensive plan was the love that this community has for the uniqueness of Littleton. And we heard very often that the comp plan is very Littletonized, that it has a very Littleton flavor. And trying to make the determination of what does Littletonized mean, I think a lot of people would identify Littleton with the historic downtown area. And what should that area look like? And we do have recommendations in there to look at that more closely and do a downtown plan that would include mobility as well as development. So I can tell you right now, as staff, we do have several active development applications for property downtown.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah,
Question for Keith. He looks bored over there, so give him some work. Question on the Transportation Master Plan with some of the projects lists that were brought up. This is not a list of, you're not going to start breaking ground on this tomorrow, all these things, right? This is just a list of things to look at in the future to evaluate as we move forward, right?
Well, I would love to break ground, but you guys got to give me the money to do that. So no, you know, when you build a transportation master plan, this is our first one. Most communities are into updates and revisions at this point in time. And so what you're really doing is taking a look at what does your future city look like from a transportation standpoint, and what network do you need to support that across all modes. And so what you do is you look at that future city and you figure out what projects it takes to get there. And then you put those in sort of a master list and rank them out, and then you have to deal with the reality. How do you actually get there? Where do you get the funding? And so it's really a guiding document to help us work with the community to, you know, figure out the best path forward for transportation, how we fund it, and where we put our attention. You know, one of the things you see through a lot of that is a lot of it's safety oriented. And that's a key thing for us. So how do we sort through that? So it's not a start at number one and head down the list, because that would be an impossibility.
And it wouldn't be without future consideration, evaluation, discussion with.
No, on an annual basis, you know, this is the first year. You've been able to see a 5-year plan related to transportation improvements and maintenance. And so what you'll see going forward is on an annual basis, you're going to see an update of that. And when we go beyond maintenance to capital projects, which is a lot of what you see in the transportation plan implementation section, that's the kind of thing that as a staff we work through. We work through with finance, we work through with you all, with the Transportation and Mobility Board, and on an annual basis, we're touching what that is. Some of it's driven by, you know, our success in getting grants, and a project may move up based on that. So that's really, it's truly a living framework for us to continue to plan and be successful over time.
Thank you.
Jerry.
Thank you. And this is for the city attorney. So it had mentioned that behind Aspen Grove, there would be a road going through our parks there, and I'm sure we have codes that address those kind of issues. The current comp plan also says that Windermere will go through from Getty's, where it now ends, that it'll go all the way to Mineral. That's never happened, and I think we have codes that would not let that happen at this point. So with that in mind, and piggybacking on what Karina had mentioned on the codes, a couple had mentioned the moratorium. We don't need a moratorium if we have codes in place, of which we do today. They may not be up to date, but we do have codes, and we're still going to operate to those codes until they change. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. We do have existing code that would still be in place right now. In terms of the legal tools, the word moratorium has been used a couple times. And as the city identifies certain locations in the city that are more susceptible to change that may not be consistent between potentially the adopted comprehensive plan as well as our current zoning and code ordinances, that is something that City Council could consider doing and refining in terms of what sort of development that City Council would want to limit. But obviously, this is an ongoing discussion that staff needs to have with consultants as well as bringing City Council on board.
So if something were to, the wind showed that something may happen, council could act quickly to something, a moratorium or another action, if need be.
Using the word quickly, yeah, we'll use that term loosely, but correct, we can be reactionary
quickly
to
as it can be.
certain things.
And when I'm thinking of the Marathon property at one point, the council acted quickly years ago when they thought a nonprofit was going to come in and buy a good part of the property, and which means we would lose commercial. So
Right.
councils can act quickly.
We can. I mean, there are some limitations, and we can get into it another night because I don't think anyone wants to hear about it. But certain properties and certain developers can get vested rights in terms of what it is that they can do with their property. And they typically come in on what your current zoning, what your current comp plan was at the time of the application, not necessarily what could be adopted tonight or what could be passed, you know, in a month from now. So there are some limitations in terms of what council could do in terms of restricting certain types of development in certain locations, depending on how far along a developer is in their application process.
So put another way then, and I can do it in 20 words or less. So zoning and codes are really the ruler on what can and cannot be done at this point.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Was that less than 20 words?
Wasn't until you said that.
16. It wasn't until I said, was that 19?
Other questions? I would like staff to address this concern a little bit more beyond what Mayor Pro Tem Valdez had talked about regarding this road behind Aspen Grove, destroying South Platte Park. I think that we brought this up at the study session we had with the Planning Commission, and this is what do they call it, a drafter's error? So Keith, who wants to take this ball?
I will be happy
All right.
to take this one. So, basically in an earlier section of the draft, one of the things that's important to us is, we're getting ready to embark with all the other communities along the corridor on the planning and environmental linkages study with CDOT, which will really lay out the future of the corridor. Why the transportation and comp plan are critical to that is it's our ability to convey to CDOT and all the other partners out there what is important to Littleton, what is the community character that needs to be respected, and how does that look when it comes to the transportation network. Because if we did that in a vacuum, you might have like a 6-lane arterial with a median down the center and an HOV lane, tolled HOV lane, which we're certainly not going to want out there. So in the section of road section of the community between Santa Fe and South Platte Park, right through there today we have a whole mix of uses and property types and all those kind of things. And so in going into that, there was originally kind of a line that went through there, and at the end of the day, what's laid over there now is what we refer to as an access preservation area. And what that means is that as we look at everything throughout that corridor, whether it's related to Santa Fe, whether it's related to South Platte Park, and individual parcels is that there's a variety of access methods through that area today. Some of it comes up through South Platte Parkway, some of it comes in from Santa Fe, and it's important for us to provide a way to say that as we look at things in that area, we need to look at how current property accesses the transportation system, how we can preserve that, and also how we can provide opportunities in those areas to maybe sometimes consolidate or improve transportation. There's not going to be, I'm not going to go out there with a Sharpie on the map and start at Mineral and draw a black Sharpie line all the way up to Bowles and say there's going to be a road in there. I mean, that's never going to happen. But what it is it's important for us to say, yes, this is a challenging access area. And we need to make a clear statement that we need to always look at access for property owners, residents, users, businesses in the park in that area to assure that we are doing the best we can to serve the community in the ways that are laid out in the comp plan. What's important to us, which is, the park is clearly at the top of that list, and so is, commerce and in the neighborhoods, and that's what's important to us through there. So that's really what the access preservation area is. It's a statement that says we always need to be focused on this when we're working through that, and we need to keep that at the top of our list when we discuss and look at anything throughout that area.
Thank you. Any other questions, council?
I do have one more.
Okay.
For Kathleen. Thank you. I've heard but a handful of people say that they knew nothing about this or didn't find out about it until recently. But for all of us, we've been very involved for a couple of years now. Just give us an idea of some of the marketing and outreach that has gone on over the last 18 to 20 months.
Yeah, and we created an appendix that kind of recaps all of those results. I think the graphic that you saw even in the video.
For our listeners.
And so, the things that really were critical to the effort, I know that a few folks have mentioned the survey this evening. That was an opportunity for people that wanted to write some illustrative gems about all that they love in Littleton. That was great input for us, but it paled in comparison to the over 3,000 conversations that we had at the same time. So I think when all is said and done, we counted about a little over 83,000 or 8,300 conversations. We had hundreds of events, so we really did make an effort. And
Hundreds of events such as?
So actually with some of the best practices that we've learn from other communities, the opportunity to go where people are. So being at the concert at the museum, being at the library. I think one of the days that we actually spent at the library, 120 people that we were able to spend time with, just hanging out in the lobby. Being at the hospital and visiting with people that are both in Littleton, visiting family, but also those that are living there and people that are working here in our city. So those types of opportunities of just literally popping up in a location where we know we're going to be able to interact with people. That day at the library was a perfect opportunity for us to talk to young families. They have very busy schedules. They're a tough one to kind of interact with in our community. So it also included things like being at the farmers market. We did also obviously host the telephone town hall. We did send 2 postcards to all mailing addresses here in the city, one last year and again this year. We've had an article in the Littleton Report starting last June, and we've had an article in every published issue of the Littleton Report. We know that is an incredible communications tool for us. We've had regular social media posts to the tune of twice a month. We've had, as a result of that, a website. We grew our individual email list from basically about 0 to right in the ballpark of 1,200 recipients of that email newsletter. And so we were building that along the way. I think the biggest piece of electronic communications was working with a lot of partners. So being in front of businesses and others to say, you have some communications tools. Can we tap into that? So you'll see that number was over 51,000 in terms of whose inboxes we were showing up in. So I think all of those tools become a huge piece. Is there room to grow? Absolutely. There is always room to grow when you're trying to engage your community. I think even the survey results, we saw a 2.5% response. Most of the other communities that we talked with were sort of in the 0.5% or 0.75% of response. So, more than double that. I think there's still plenty of opportunities. What has been most important is building the relationship. So as much as some of the electronic tools can be helpful, just actually getting out. The events that you host each summer, the Meet, Greet, and Eats, have been an incredible opportunity to have some really great conversation. Like, it is still really surprising to me how much time people are willing to sort of donate of themselves to come and have that conversation and really get into the weeds of, what's happening with the planning effort.
And also, Jennifer had given us all copies, I believe, or maybe the city clerk, about at least an inch or more thick of emails that we've received over the course of this time. And I didn't count the pages, but any idea how many pages were there?
I should know that off the top of my head because I made that into one document. But there were 103 submissions. None of them were singular in their comment. I would say the smallest number of comments from one person might have been in the ballpark of 3 to 5. So 5 times that. So when I have heard from other communities, our most recent neighbor that I talked with was Centennial. When they had their comprehensive plan out for comment, they received 6 comments. So, that I think was truly a testament to the engagement that people have felt throughout the process. And the documents that you saw in August, I think look considerably different from the one that you're looking at tonight. And so that input was a really critical piece, much like last year's effort with the unifying vision and guiding principles, that you really genuinely take that input in and have the opportunity for the community to check the work and make sure that we got it right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I need a motion, please.
I move to approve the resolution adopting the Envision Littleton Comprehensive Plan, which includes the future land use and character map and the transportation master plan. Do I need to add as amended by Planning Commission?
Yeah, please.
As amended by Planning Commission for changes in action E&T 16.
You need a second?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I would like to make an amendment. My amendment, and I don't have it verbalized properly, I'm sure, would be to approve without the Planning Commission's amendment. And the reason, so I'd like to get a second on that before I.
Second.
Thank you. The reason that I'm suggesting that we don't approve with the Planning Commission's amendment is largely based on comment from staff, which I widely agree with in terms of the verbiage of the amendment, in that it creates a challenge for the execution. So one of the things that the staff has said is that the amendment seems more prescriptive than staff would recommend or suggest for a comprehensive plan. And until they have the model up and running, it's difficult to know if and how these things can be measured and delivered on this particular action plan. And I think that it's important for us to understand that the comprehensive plan is not how do we do this. The comprehensive plan is a much broader document. And I think getting too specific, too tied in is part of the thing that starts to snag us up and get us just looping around something, which is not effective use of anybody's time. We also have a pretty extensive economic development study that we have approved for the Economic Development Department that will be executed. And ever since we started talking about this in March, we have understood that there will be one of the many features of or down pulls from the comprehensive plan will be an economic development plan. And I think this fits nicely into that and will be executed more thoroughly through that. So I think we get too tied up in this. I think we're wordsmithing a little bit too much. And so that's kind of my logic for why I would like to just see us approve this without that amendment. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Elrod.
I can appreciate that and the comment from staff on that as well. As I look at the amendment in context to the action here, action ENT 16, I actually do think that, and not just in this action, but actually other actions throughout the document, that we've purposefully used terms like examine, guide, evaluate, because that is intended to not be descriptive and to study and consider. And so we see this in this action. We see it within the action as it sits right now, where it says it can examine gaps in retail. It can help guide the development of vacant land. And the amendment that's proposed by Planning Commission is to should also evaluate and establish community job creation. So again, I think they're staying true to the intent and guidance that we have gotten on the actions to be a consideration, not a definitive.
Councilmember Fay.
It seems that the proposed amendment is terribly prescriptive. It seems that it's telling staff that we don't think staff knows how to do their job or what your job descriptions are, and so we need to tell you. I don't care for the almost preachiness of the words and the list of words. It kind of reminds me of, Peggy will resonate with this, I think, when we're teaching writing and we try to get the student to list all the words that you could use in this slot, and they could come up with 10 or 20 of them, and this amendment seems to be that kind of list of every word. What you're supposed to do next, if you're writing, is then pick the best one rather than list all of them. The thing I mind most about an amendment at this stage is that we've had a very definite, clear process of how to get everything in. And so we had the document, and then we had input from staff, council, planning commission, and the community. And then we have that incorporated, and then we did it again, and then we did it again. And it really seems odd to have yet something else added at the end of the process that doesn't go through the process, that's tacked on at the end.
Thank you. Other comments? Questions? I would just simply add before we vote that the Planning Commission did spend, a minute to a minute and a half discussing this, and I think that these are the types of things that really do deserve a more dynamic conversation. Staff is not saying, and neither am I, that this is not something that should not be done. It's simply that perhaps this is better in a later step. So I would ask council now, we will vote on the amended motion, and the amended motion is to remove the amendment suggested by the Planning Commission. Does everybody understand what we're voting on?
Let's say that again very slowly.
A yes vote will remove the Planning Commission's amendment from the comp plan. Okay, ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Elrod voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
Thank you. We are back to our original motion.
And Mayor, I have an amendment.
Okay.
To the original. So I have an amendment that I have shared with council and actually brought up at our last study session. It is simply there is one action item that we do have in the infrastructure and services as it relates to, so I'll read it. It's action I&S 17. Which is create an updated master plans for Bemis Library and Littleton Museum, and then it continues. And the ask that I have in my amendment is to just split up the library and museum into 2 separate actions as opposed to lumped into one action. And so my proposed amendment, and I'll read it for the community here, is I hereby move to amend the Envision Littleton Comprehensive Plan Infrastructure and Services section to amend Action I&S 17 to individually call out the library and museum as 2 separate actions. And thereby, the first one would be an update to Action I&S 17 to represent the library. Action I&S 17, create an updated master plan for Bemis Library in conjunction with partners such as the Library Board, Friends of the Littleton Library and Museum, Dr. Cog, and others to be a resource for the community in more innovative, strategic, and sustainable ways, to be both a physical and virtual hub for literary access, resource connections, and community outreach program. The second part of this amendment is to add Action I&S 18 for the museum. Action I&S 18, develop a Littleton Museum and Grounds Master Plan, addressing sustainability of buildings and infrastructure, expanding and diversifying programming offerings, and exploring funding and financing opportunities to maintain the caliber of the facility. This plan will continue to position the museum as a regional draw for visitors and nationally recognized as a Smithsonian affiliate. And again, my intent, council, here was not to change the essence of the original action, but just to give formality and significance to each of those 2 amenities for our city that we have heard from our citizens in our vision process, and really is just to respect the priority that they hold for our community.
That was the
Karina needs a
motion,
second.
right? Second.
You have a second from Councilmember Cole. Any comments and questions? Councilmember Schlechter?
Yeah, when I first looked at these, I was supportive. I'm still supportive of separating the library and the museum out and calling them out individually, though I do think this gets into the weeds a little too much, and they're a little too different. If this is moving forward, I think I would like to amend proposed IS 18 here to read, develop a Littleton Museum and Grounds Master Plan in conjunction with the Museum Board and other partners, addressing sustainability of building and infrastructure, expanding, diversifying programming offerings, and exploring funding and financing opportunities to maintain the caliber of the facility, and strike the final sentence.
I'm okay with that.
I need a second.
So he's making a motion.
He's making a
To
motion
amend.
to amend.
To amend.
And as the person presenting the amendment, I'm okay with that recommendation, that suggestion.
It doesn't matter. It belongs to the body. I need a second.
I have a question.
Who seconded? It's been seconded by Pat Driscoll.
My question is, we have a proposed amendment. Did we vote on that?
Not yet.
No, but we have an
Then-
amendment to an amendment now.
Then how is it we have an amendment to amendment? Why not just change the amendment that we
Michelle?
vote on?
You can do that.
Process.
Now it's done.
No, because we would be voting on the amended amendment. We're doing it correctly. So this is exactly why I'm not going to support either one of these, because we are wordsmithing this, we are making amendments to a document that none of this has been vetted through. We're talking about two different boards and commissions, two different entities. There's work to be done on this, and we are not going to be able to accomplish the work that needs to be done in terms of the clarity on this tonight at the dais, in my opinion. And so I think that we are getting into a place where making amendments on top of amendments in just in terms of the wordsmithing, we're not making any substantial changes to the comp plan by approving any of these. So I'm cautioning council in discussion to consider, continuing to amend these. And if we do want to have continued amendments, then I'm going to take a break so that we can confer with our city attorney to make sure that we're doing this properly. Is there any other comments? Councilmember Valdez.
Yes. We could do the same thing with every action item here. We could say exactly what we want in there. And I'm looking at action IS 12. It's the same thing, continue asset management planning on all components of city infrastructure. We could change that into a whole 4 or 5 more pages on what we want that to be. I'm okay with the actions as they are. I appreciate your doing that. I do. But I think we can make this 92-page document into 9,200 pages if we did that on absolutely every item. So we have a motion and a second on the table.
Yeah, any other comments or questions? So our first motion is to amend the proposed amendment with Councilmember Schlechter's verbiage. Does anybody want that repeated? Are you ready to vote?
No.
Yes, no, it's in favor.
A yes is in favor of his rewriting of the verbiage in his amendment, and no vote is not in favor.
The vote is 4 in favor with Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Valdez and Council Members Brinkman and Fay voting no. The motion carries 4-3.
Now we are at our original amended motion that Karina read, and it has been amended per Councilmember Schlechter's amendment. Does anybody need that reread?
Yes.
Okay.
What do you want reread? Her entire amendment and her updates?
I want the motion we're voting on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
You want to give that to Karina to read it aloud?
Changed now.
See if you can read that.
So we have an amendment, and then she has 2 amendments updating the action plans.
okay.
Reading
So
as
the-
one amendment.
So the amendment is to update Action INS 17 to represent the library, which is Action INS 17, create updated master plan for Bemis Library in conjunction with partners such as the Library Board, Friends of the Littleton Library Museum, Dr. Cog and others to be a resource for the community in more innovative, strategic, and sustainable ways to be both a physical and virtual hub for literary access, resource connections, community outreach, and programming. And add additional Action INS 18, develop a Littleton Museum and Grounds Master Plan in conjunction with the Museum Board and other partners, addressing sustainability of building and infrastructure, expanding and diversifying program offering, and exploring funding and financing opportunities to maintain the caliber of the facility, period.
We moved that last sentence.
Councilmember Schlachter.
So I have a question for Councilmember Alrod. As I go back and read this original action item 17, it says, create updated master plans for Bemis Library and the Littleton Museum collaboratively with the Library Advisory and Museum Boards to include both physical and programming considerations. Is there something in that statement, apart from them being together, that is concerning to you? Because I mean, the more I read that, that is harken back to one of the citizen comments that's kind of general. It's more of a framework for a future plan rather than being prescriptive to saying, do this, this, and this. I think all the things that you put forward in there can still be accomplished in what is in this original language here.
So my primary purpose was for each of these entities to stand on their own, because they can and they should. And we may choose to take an action on one for a variety of reasons, resources, and otherwise, where we may not be able to take an action on the other. And to a certain degree, they serve different purposes. The resources and services provided by the Littleton Library is different than program that may exist for the museum and what the museum represents for our community: heritage, a cultural hub, a historic amenity. So it's really to allow them to exist and stand on their own so that they get the focus individually.
Other questions? Councilmember Fay.
With such a long amendment, I get lost in what I'm. In fact, from hearing the amendment, I didn't know what the intent was. And so I have a concern that others down the line may wonder, what is it we're trying to do here? Perhaps it would be easier to, or clearer to say something along the lines of the simply that we are recognizing that they are two separate entities, if that's necessary. I don't think that's necessary. I think we know there are. And anyway, I'm finding the amendment confusing.
Comments or questions? I'm not going to support this. I think that the comp plan does call it out. It states very clearly plans. It talks about museum and library. I think the verbiage that is amended is incredibly detailed. It's been very well thought out by one council member, and we haven't had a conversation amongst all of us and the larger context of the public. And like I said, both the boards, there's a number of partnerships that are included in here, and I think that we've been very cohesive, very collaborative, very embracing of the community and all of our other partners, and this feels like a different move for me than that, and I don't think that the comp plan is wrong the way it is, and I don't think that this makes it better. So again, I'm not going to be supporting this. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I have one. I just
Councilmember
want to get feedback from staff and or the consultant about that, because like I said, at first I thought having them both called out individually was a good thing, but I don't see how having them together in 17 here is restrictive in the same way that maybe you're seeing it. As I read this over and over and read that over and over, what is your perspective on that?
So, and I can ask Gary to join us too. So we've had some internal discussions with staff and the consultant team. So the action
Gary,
doesn't
you can
really
come to the dais if you'd like.
The action doesn't really change with this amendment. So the guidance that you provided in recent conversations is to keep these broader. We've taken out a lot of references to other partners as part of that change and consistency that we've added to the document through that. So I think much of the conversation you've had tonight has been the same, to sort of remove some of those prescriptive pieces and stay broad. So the changes that were made there were an effort to sort of bring that consistency of broad language through. So I think the action is very clear.
Is this on, by the way? Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with everything Kathleen said. The only observation I have is stylistically, the expanding language there goes against everything we've been doing the last several months to condense. That's been the direction of the editing process, is to generalize, condense. The other part is to not call out partners in these action statements. We took that out of other action statements throughout the plan. And the final thought, yes, they're in a single action. Throughout the plan, you can pick out words, you can pick out phrases as something to pursue. So they were combined, but they can be pursued separately. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any additional questions? Okay. A yes vote approves the amendment to the original motion.
As amended.
Yeah, approves the motion as a,
Yes.
no,
Yeah.
Amendment as amended.
Removed.
Just the amendment.
correct. It approves the amendment.
As amended.
As amended.
The amended amendment.
Just vote.
The amendment was amended.
Got it. Ready? So a yes vote approves of the amendment.
Yes.
Ready to vote?
The vote is 2 in favor with council members Driscoll, Valdez, Brinkman, Schlachter, and Fay voting no. The motion fails 2-5.
Okay, we are back to our original motion.
That was.
What are we voting on again?
Wait,
No, that was the amendment.
The amendment.
That was
Oh,
the
that was the
amendment.
amended, as amended.
So we have a motion in front of us that has no amendments on it.
Correct.
The motion is, it's a resolution to adopt the Envision Littleton Comprehensive Plan, which includes the future land use and character map and the Transportation Master Plan. Ready to vote? A yes vote approves it.
I'd like to have one comment about this. I just want
Certainly.
to say that through this whole process, I've been quite impressed with the outreach and feedback and the input we've gotten. This would be fun, yeah. So speak now or forever hold your peace.
That's right.
And, you know, getting the feedback from the citizens and the community, I thought was very impressive. Seeing the public comment before our study session previously, whenever that was, to see the comments from the public in their emails and to see the changes actually on the paper or on the screen in the document. I thought that was very impressive to go through and take out explicit phrases that people said, hey, I want to see this change, and there it was. And we spent 18 months going through discussing this and seeing the 7 of us and the planning commissioners and the community, how it really came together as a collective effort here was really impressive. It would be great if we could get 45,000 opinions on this, but I don't think that is feasible or necessary. I think we listened to everyone that wanted to have a chance to speak. We gave the opportunity to everyone. I think that's the important thing. We didn't have to be as open with that, and I thought we were, and I thought it was great for the community. Not all comments were put into the document, nor should all comments be, because it's not going to be all things to everyone, but I think this was a great job, and I think we've got to a really good place to move to the future. It no longer is a outdated manuscript carved into stone, but a living document that will allow us to be proactive and not reactive, and I think that's a good thing.
Thank you. Councilmember Valdez.
Yeah,
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez.
thank you. I want to thank the city manager for making this happen, and to Kathleen and your team and the consultant and stuff. Mark Rudnicki, who was on the Planning Commission chair, he and I, we were talking about this in the late 90s when we were on Planning Commission for about 12 years each. And Mark has continued, he's going for the record now. There are only, I think, 2 other times that I can really think of that we had more citizen input. And one of them was the Marathon property, the first plan that ever came to us. And the other one was Walmart. With Walmart and also Marathon, this chamber was filled many times, and we met Planning Commission and City Council at many meetings past midnight. So I think the effort to get as much input is great. Thank you very much. In our neighborhood, we have 2 parties every year, one in the summer, one at Christmas time. We have them same week of the month for each, and we put out information to everybody. And it's always amazing that people who have lived there for 20-some years say, oh, I didn't know we had a party this year. It is difficult to try to get everybody involved, so thank you very much for everything you've done, Kathleen. I really do appreciate that. I've been talking to a lot of District 2 residents, more than regularly, but they're very concerned more about how everything, what's more important to them and their families. They do understand that the comp plan is paramount and that guides the future of Littleton. And except for a few citizens, most just want the comp plan and the codes to get updated as soon as possible. I've written a lot of business plans over the past 40 years, a lot of business plans. And a business plan is similar to a comp plan on a different scale. Working with small businesses, they have to have a plan, and those that don't have a plan fail. And sometimes those that have a plan and they don't adjust it fail. You always have to adjust your plan. I see that the same way with this comp plan. It's in writing, and now it needs to be adjusted as we go forward, assuming we get it approved. And the one thing is for sure, like a business plan, it's not going to be perfect from the start. Mistakes will be found, and I think Ms. Knuffy, she may have found something in there that needs to be addressed. I would hope that Mark, you'll be charged with, the city manager will be charged with making sure those kind of things do match up and are correct. So we will need to be making some changes as we go, and we need to do them more frequently than just every 12 months. I think right now we're calling out maybe end of the year, I think December or something like that. But I think we do need to make changes as often as possible. I also think if we put too much emphasis into the final product as being just perfect or near perfect, we're going to be here for another 20 years, and Mark and I will still be complaining about the comp plan not be completed. I do not want the perfect, as Mark had said earlier, I do not want the perfect to be the enemy of not getting things done. And we have adopted a philosophy on this council of let's get her done. And I think we're getting to that. This is just the end of the beginning. There is a tremendous amount of work that needs to happen now. Comp plans, we need to adjust the comp plan. We need codes, we need transportation plan. First, we got to start with something so we can start talking. The transportation board, they're biting at the bit really to get going, and I can't wait for them to get going. Now is the time to focus on the process, and which will allow us to make the adjustments that need be. I think delaying the comp plan to get it right or to get it perfect right now is not the right move. The momentum matters. We have momentum. We must keep the momentum moving forward. I support this comp plan, and I am definitely going to vote in favor of it.
Thank you. Other comments?
Debbie?
Councilmember Elroy.
I'd like to commend staff and the consultants for always pushing back. So I am notorious for bringing forward amendments, and not unlike what happened this evening where my amendment did not pass. Even throughout this process, I have brought forward ideas and thoughts, as have other council members. But Kathleen and consultants and staff have pushed back and said, sorry, we didn't hear that. We didn't hear that from the citizens, so it's not coming forward. So I think that is absolutely a testament of this being a true grassroots effort, a Littleton plan by the people of Littleton. So thank you for pushing back. I also, having spent some time on the Planning Commission not that long ago as these two characters, but I too look forward to now being on council, not having to be reactive and being proactive, as Mark Rudnicki pointed out. And I really look forward to, where is Kate, being giddy. I love that she used that word. I look forward to being giddy about what we can accomplish now with this comprehensive plan, as opposed to what we just had to accept in the past and react. So that's exactly how I want to move forward with this comprehensive plan and the transportation plan, and that's the feeling that I'm hearing from our greater community. I do love that we have heart That's cool. That's a big deal. I'm glad we brought that together in the most important part, which is our heritage, the things we value in the arts and culture and recreation. And we know that we are a regional draw for so many reasons. So this feels fantastic. Thank you for everyone here that participated and the community at large.
Other comments?
Mayor, the main motion was amended to exclude the resolution recommended by Planning Commission.
Yes.
I just wanted to make you aware of that, because we said there wasn't an amendment, that there was an amendment.
Okay.
Right. That's what we're voting on.
That's right.
To exclude the planning.
Let's vote on it before we forget about it.
Sorry.
So I'm very grateful that we've reached this point with the comp plan. Since 2007, I have been having to make decisions with my other council members on important issues such as land use and zoning, community design, from a comp plan that, while it was written in, or ratified in 1984, it did have two revisions, one in the 90s and one in 2014. Even the revisions were not as detailed or as in-depth or as thorough or as comprehensive as we have in our new plan. I think that one of the things that is happening is so much is changing. Things are changing so much more quickly than they did. In 1984, things were a lot slower, and you could probably have, things kind of just meander through the comp plan for a while. But, in the last couple of years, we've had to deal with things that we don't even reference in our comp plan or our code. Metro districts. We have to go back to state statute to look at that. Nobody wants to run a home rule city off a state statute. Live work. We didn't have anything in our code or anything in our comp plan that would allow for that. There's a lot of dynamics in the way that people choose to live, work, and play now that our comp plan did not address. So this is an important document because it is more responsive to our community. It was never intended to be perfect. If we, as has been said, if we had been trying to get it perfect, we wouldn't have got it done. What I have really appreciated hearing, and also tonight from the community, is that they want us to keep paying attention to this. Look at it again. Look at it in 5 years. No, look at it in a year. And that is important, and that is very important because it's a new document, and it is going to need tweaks and rewrites. Anybody that's written a draft of anything, you can go back and read it again and make a number of changes, and read it a day later and make a number of changes. So I think that's going to be important, and I think that also continues to keep the community involved and engaged. I couldn't be more appreciative for Kathleen and the work she's done. And I really want to thank you for that. And a lot of people have said that we rushed this thing through. Well, you can do in 18 months a lot if you put about 10,000 hours into it. If you put 5 hours into 18 months, that's a very different story. But when you look at the number of hours from the staff, from the consultant, Kathleen's full-time commitment, council, planning, community, I don't even want to know what that number would look like. But those are the hours that were put into this comp plan, and that is not small. That is a huge, huge commitment from everybody. So I'm not buying off on the rush to get this done. This should have been done a long time ago. It wasn't done. If this council hadn't drawn a line in the sand and said, we will do it, we would not have a comp plan, and we would be going into the next rezone with a 1984 plan, and that's doing nobody any service whatsoever. So thank you to this council. A lot of heavy lifting, a lot of long hours, a lot of debates, conversations, discussions, disagreements, agreements. We all share a passion for this community. We wouldn't be up here if we didn't. And this has really been a labor of a lot of love from us to the community. So I think we're ready to vote.
I was ready to vote
about an hour ago.
You talk longer than me. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor, carries unanimously.
Go. Waiting.
Was it budget time now?
Oh. Yep, we knew that would happen. And then we're supposed to. Okay. Wah, wah.
There we go, there we go.
Let's just
Let's jump up there.
the budget now while we're doing
Very
this.
anticlimactic.
All right,
We'll do it for the budget.
we'll do it for the budget, Tiffany.
Maybe next.
No, they're for the budget.
They're for the budget.
Okay, we'll do the balloons for the budget.
She's going to open it.
Or their
This was-
next year's budget. Or
This
the year
was not
after.
designed by the city's engineers, by the way.
Is someone,
Yeah.
is someone videotaping this?
Well, there go the lights.
There you go.
Go for it, Kyle.
Okay.
Okay.
Next time. Let's move
All
on.
right. So we are moving on to our next agenda item. This is ordinance 25.
See, we're having fun already.
It's the second introduction of an ordinance to be known as the Annual Appropriations Bill, adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes of the city of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, state of Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2020 and ending December 31, 2020. What we're going to do is we have 4 budget ordinances that we will go through. All 4 require public hearing. So we are going to have 1 staff presentation on the budget, and then I'll open the public hearing, and anybody that wants to speak on any one of these 4, there's, the sign-up sheets are here. No one has signed up, but we will hold 1 joint public hearing for it instead of 4 separate ones, and then we will vote on each separately. So I need staff, your presentation, please, on, I will read each ordinance as we go to the vote, but
You do it well.
I'll
we have
ask
the
you
votes
to.
for
I know it's really hard to follow that right there, so
No,
I'll do my best.
I think that we can not worry about that right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
Let's
Tiffany.
move forward.
Tiffany, just go ahead. Tiffany, just go ahead.
Liz,
Sure.
we're done.
Yeah, balloons, not going to happen. Okay, Tiffany?
Liz, can we hold off on the balloons for a moment?
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Tiffany?
Good evening. Before you this evening, we have 4 ordinances that are related to the 2020 budget. I have 1 presentation that's going to encompass all of them. The first one you have is the actual budget appropriation for a number of funds. This includes the general fund. We also have the establishment of the mill levy. We have the 2020 budget for the sewer utility enterprise, and we also have the 2020 budget for the stormwater and flood management utility enterprise. Just a couple of highlights. We had a couple of budget sessions this year for the 2020 budget. We did a full-day presentation in September on September 7th, and then we also had a follow-up study session on September 24th. I would like to highlight that there were no proposed changes or changes from the proposed budget as it was presented to council from staff. Council considered 18 policy questions. Some of those included employee compensation and benefits. We had a net increase of 4.4 FTEs, 3 of those which will be paid from the sewer and the storm drainage funds. In light of the balloons and the passing of the comp plan and TMP plan, we need to continue with that process. So we have some projects slated for 2020, the downtown mobility, Santa Fe corridor, and then the transportation engineering design standards. We did put a budget proviso on those items for $500,000, so council will need to approve that before we can move forward on those projects. There's some cybersecurity and risk management funds that were requested as well. Expansion of the co-responder program in the police department, a number of infrastructure improvements in sewer and storm drainage. And then we did include a rate increase for sewer and storm utility fees as well for 2020, and the fire commemoration, and also a number of open space projects. General fund revenues, the total revenues are $46.3 million. The majority of that comes from sales and use tax, about 76%, with the remainder coming from property taxes, franchise fees, and other revenues. For expenditures, the total is about 48 million. The largest expenditure is personnel costs at 67%, and the remaining operating maintenance. And then I do want to highlight that we have the $3.1 million that we are transferring to the Capital Improvements Fund to address the street maintenance, as we noted last year that we would do related to the fire merger. In addition to that, we are decreasing the property tax mill levy for 2020 from 6.662 mils to 2.0 mils. The ending fund balance of 2020 is estimated to be $11.3 million. That is well within our policy of 8 to 18% in the end of the 5th year. This represents about 25% of the operating expenditures for 2020. We did include a graph that just kind of shows your beginning fund balance, your revenues and expenditures, and your ending fund balance as well for those other funds. And with that, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them at this time.
Council, any questions? No questions. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to open the public hearing. As I stated, we have sign-up sheets and no one has signed up. If anybody would like to come down and speak to any of the 4 ordinances on the budget, do so now. Seeing no one, I'll close public hearing at 8:30. And I need a motion on ordinance 25.
I move to approve the ordinance known as the annual appropriation bill adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes of the city of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, state of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2020, ending December 31st, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ready to vote? Yep.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Need a motion on ordinance 26.
I move to approve ordinance 26-2019, second introduction of ordinance establishing the tax levy of 2 mills to defray the costs of municipal government of the city of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, state of Colorado, for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2020 and ending December 31st, 2020, and directing publication of the ordinance.
Second. We have a second from Councilmember Driscoll. Ready to vote? Yep.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Ordinance 27. Who's next?
Anyone?
Peggy.
No.
I move to approve the ordinance adopting the 2020 Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise Fund budget. Was she going, or?
No.
Okay.
We need a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ready to vote?
Yep.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Ordinance 28.
I move to approve the ordinance adopting the 2020 Littleton Stormwater and Flood Management Utility Enterprise Budget.
Second. We got a second from Mayor Pro Tem Valdez. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Boom. We have a budget, we have a comprehensive plan, and we have a transportation mobility plan. We are done.
We have reports.
Oh, we have city manager comments. City manager, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I may have to defer most of my time because the city attorney wants to talk for the next 20 minutes, I hear. Just a quick comment. I think, the work of 18 months is not to be taken lightly. Council obviously appreciates that. I'm confident the community does. The council should be extremely proud of what we just accomplished. This is one significant project. It sets the direction for a very long time. Council obviously understands this. The political commitment to getting it to this point is not to be underestimated. And the political commitment from this council for the next steps and to update this periodically and be committed to that, I commend the council. I also want to just kind of congratulate the staff and our consultant team. It was a pretty significant project. Council understood that, put the resources in place. It truly was a team effort along with the Planning Commission, our CCC. I couldn't be more proud. I've been involved in efforts like this in the past, and I truly thought that I had seen pretty significant public process and engagement. This just blows this away. I am truly proud of what we've accomplished. The other thing is I don't want to take lightly that the budget we just passed here by council, we've had a fair amount of discussion. Again, I think the council should be commended and be very proud. We are a highly efficient run organization and a community. Our general fund, our utilities, we are in solid shape. Yes, we wish we had more money for those kinds of operations. We know we have challenges in the capital fund. That will be dealt with. There is a commitment by the council to deal with that. But the passage of this budget for 2020, I think the council, again, should be very proud of that. So those are my comments, and I think I used up the city attorney's time. So.
Good. City attorney.
Nothing from the city.
City attorney, do you want to tell us about your new hire?
Yeah, starting on Halloween, October 31st, Ashley Augustin will be starting as the Senior Assistant City Attorney.
Awesome.
Council may remember that Ms. Augustin was one of the 3 finalists for the City Attorney position, and really looking forward to working with her, and I'm sure she'll be a great asset to the City of Littleton and City Council in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Elrod?
Oh, I have a lot of great stuff. So I was able to volunteer at Euclid Middle School. They asked for different leaders from the community to talk about what they do, and they were working on a project called GRAPES. And GRAPES stands for Geography, Religion, Academics, Politics, Economy, and Sustainability. So a lot of the things that we've been talking about, so it was so exciting to do that. And Jerry, were you there as well?
I was there.
I thought so. And we had
there the whole day.
Yeah. I think you had a different class. So, and Board of Education.
It was 2 days. You were the Wednesday, I was the Thursday.
So I just received my thank you cards. Did you get yours, Jerry? Jerry, did you get your thank you cards?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I'm going to share this. I'm going to share some comments, but these comments really are not necessarily specific to me, but it really is specific. It is more to all of the leaders here at council and the community. So I want to share them with you. Thank you for taking your own time and helping us. Me and others appreciate your help and how nice you were. That was about me. But here's what's about all of you. Thank you for making the world a better place. So this was, I mean, and these were genuine. These are really smart kids. I was actually very impressed with them. I'm going to share another one. Thank you for helping Euclid this week. Your help was very useful to everyone. Your volunteer work is heavily appreciated here. So they really recognize the value of all the various volunteers, and these are the types of things that, the hours that we spend, we enjoy spending them because we're doing it for things, for kids and people like them. All right, the other great thing that I got to do was I went to the North Littleton Promise Fiesta Dinner, which is their fundraiser. And again, Jerry, I missed you this time as well.
We contributed. I
yes,
wasn't able
I know.
to go. Yeah.
And again, North Littleton Promise is just doing such
I
a
also
great.
didn't get a thank you card.
I can't help you with that. Maybe there's a churro I can give you.
But you were probably very pleasant.
Stop. North Littleton Promise really is a great community asset and support of the northeast area of Littleton, and it was just so encouraging to see how many people's lives they impact, really helping to support children up through middle school in their academic efforts when parents may not be able to do that. So there's incredible leadership that's coming from that segment of our community that we may not often hear enough from. But they are a big part of who we are as Littleton, and it was an absolute pleasure and joy to be there. So that was my good feeling week.
Thank you. Councilmember Fay.
I was going to pass so we could get out of here, but since we're not doing that, I have a report, and I too have alphabets. So homelessness policy committee for Tri-Cities. Again, the Tri-Cities is Littleton, Sheridan, and Inglewood, and we're working together primarily because we share the Platte River. We are working now with the executive director of the Metro Denver Housing Initiative, and boy, that guy knows his stuff. He has suggested, and the committee took on his suggestion, that we work on a logic model to look at the problem of homelessness as a multifaceted problem rather than just what are we going to do with these people. That we look at the elements that go into their being homeless. Now listen to this. My group of letters is PESTLE, P-E-S-T-L-E, and that stands for, and again, this is the things that feed into homelessness. P is for political influences, E is for economic, S is for social, T is for technical. These are all things that feed into homelessness and keep it from being something that's simple to resolve. Continuing, L is for legal, and E is for environmental. So when we hear from people from the community, for example, and I think it was this summer we were hearing from people about a homelessness, or people who were camped, assumed to be homeless, at a location where Douglas County and Littleton and Centennial all come together. Our number one obstacle for doing anything about that was legal, because it wasn't known for sure who owned the property, who had jurisdiction, and no one could take action, as I understand it, until it was all straightened out exactly who owned what. And then it turned out the encampment was across 2 different municipalities, so then Littleton and Centennial had to work together. Centennial didn't have the legal things in place to do anything, and we go on and on. So this from Matt at MDHI is really helpful for a nice, sane look at what really homelessness encompasses. All for now.
Thank you. Councilmember Schlechter?
Yeah, one quick thing. I just want to commend the city manager and staff for so quickly implementing some elements of the comprehensive plan, working with the Fine Arts Board to install some beautiful new public art in our building here, working with artist Christo for a big new status here. I believe the name of this new installation above us here is called Anticipation, and I look forward to seeing how long that lasts. Thank you.
Thank you. Temporary art. Councilmember Cole.
Yes, last week I attended the monthly meeting of the CML Policy Board. They meet during the legislative sessions, and they're working on several things. But since the next meeting is after I'm no longer on council, I hope the council will get someone appointed to attend that meeting as soon as possible. I mean, after the election.
Councilmember Driscoll?
No report.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez?
I too was a mentor over at Euclid. I didn't get any cards, though. It's maybe it's because the advice I gave them was a little more harsh than yours.
I had a personal messenger. My son was in my class.
Okay, yeah. And it was a great day. I was really impressed by the projects those kids were working on. I also get to volunteer over at EASTA from time to time, and it's really neat to see the kids in our community do those kind of things. And you're absolutely right about North Littleton Promise. It's a fantastic organization, and it helps out some kids in our city that would otherwise not have that help. So I've gone to that many times and contributed and have given speeches there. So it is a great organization. So thank you. Thanks for bringing in your cards.
I shared them with you.
You sure my name wasn't on the envelope?
Is that it?
That's it.
So I just have a couple things. We recently had a kind of a ribbon cutting at Hudson Gardens. They've completed the work on the kind of the connection to the river. So they now have essentially a new trailhead. So there's a nice parking lot, and it takes you down into the Hudson Gardens by the Nixon's Cafe, which they have added a lot of seating there. They've added a large grassy area. They've got benches that people can purchase for family or friends. And South Suburban had run out of space in the South Platte Park area for some of these memorial benches, so this creates that. There's also a great place that they can have small events and little concerts and stuff like that, and it's being very widely used. It was a great show. Littleton contributed $400,000, I believe it was, to the completion of that, and it's one of the first phases that Hudson Gardens has for their master plan. But it's also created some additional safety over there so that people can get in and out of there off the trail to enjoy some of the coffees, et cetera. And I was invited to the annual fundraiser for Love Inc. And as we all recall, about a year ago, we had a tragic fire in Littleton, the Windermere Apartments, and there were, I think it was in the neighborhood of 156 of our citizens were displaced. And so Love Inc. rushed in and immediately engaged in helping to support that community. We then also supported Love Inc. There were a lot of other folks that supported. But Love Inc. had a great event. They're obviously a very faith-based organization, and they had a huge turnout with a very aggressive silent auction, and they got very into it, and they raised quite a bit of money. But we were given a special thank you for Littleton's appreciation of what Love Inc. does and our continued support for them. So I was asked to speak, and I was honored to do that.
Did you get a thank you card?
I actually got a bouquet of flowers, but and then shortly, I actually got two, one for my mom because it was on my mom's birthday. And then following that, we had our annual naturalization ceremony that we do with our Immigration Resource Center. And that is one of the most incredible events that we actually do. And I'm always so honored. One of the privileges of when being mayor is that you get asked to be able to speak to those groups. And it's always such a pleasure. They all sit right there, and their families are in the audience, and they're from, I wasn't able to stay because I had to run to a South Metro Fire District Board, but they're from 30, 40 different countries, and many of them are kind of wearing some of the colors of their countries, and when the final pledge is given, they denounce their current country and they become American citizens, and that is such a powerful thing to watch people literally just denounce their homeland and become American citizens. And the families are so proud of them, and it's a beautiful ceremony. So I would, if you have the opportunity to attend that next year, it definitely humbles you how hard these people work for a country that we sometimes take for granted.
I don't.
Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome.
So the only other thing I wanted to mention is that we will not have another regular meeting until November 19th.
That's what I was just looking
We
at.
have a study session next week, and then the week, I think it's a fifth Tuesday, so we have a fifth Tuesday, which we always get off. And then we are not meeting on election night. We will probably have a study session at following week, and then we will have some business on the 19th before the swearing in of new council. So I don't believe there's any other business. I want to again thank everybody for their hard work, except for that they didn't know. Those critters, that art is beautiful.
They're not
we
getting
do-
a thank you card either.
Jeez, Karina, why'd you start?
Sorry, I'll make copies.
Oh, God. Okay, thank you very much. We're adjourned.